You know those moments on TV and film that have an immediate impact? Those holy crap moments? The moments that wow you and change something? WandaVision was lacking such a moment until now. Such. Sure, there were some strange scenes before showing intrigue. There was a scene where he spoke about last week where Wanda all of a sudden changed from friendly to not so friendly towards Geraldine, or that odd thing with Dottie in episode 2. But nothing that really struck home like lightning. Well, that first 180 seconds of episode 4, holy crap. Hello and welcome to the review of Champions. Today we are going to talk about episode 4 of WandaVision, currently streaming on Disney+. Before we begin, I would like to invite all who are listening in or watching us to join our community. Go to our forum on Sakaar, make an account, chat us up, and if you are willing, you can be on the podcast or review. We are open to anyone and we'd love to see you there. Well, let me introduce today's panel. First up, we have Mr. Taylor first. And we have our producer, R. Stanton. And last but not least, we have Mr. Lord Deathman.
Hello, everybody.
Let's talk about episode 4 of WandaVision. It shows us what happened outside the barrier, which we saw at the end of last week's episode so far. Well, that's basically the episode. So we're going to take a deeper dive into the episode and we're going to talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, go do that first and then come back after to watch our review. With that being said, I would like to give the word to our first panel member. And we're going to start this week with Mr. Lord Deathman. And, well, you open, so you talk about that amazing opening scene.
Yeah, this episode of WandaVision continues to top itself. So this is my favorite episode of the show, and that seems to be the case every time a new episode of WandaVision comes out. So talking about that opening scene, taking us back to the blip, I loved it, obviously. I think what I like the best about it is just showing you the chaos of what it was like for people to return after that particular event. You see all of these people sort of running in chaos. You don't think about it, but the Earth for 5 years was operating at half capacity, right? There were half of us on the planet. So there probably was, just as Thanos intended, a whole lot more resources to go around. And then suddenly they all appear all at once. So it's not just the chaos of them coming back and the physical spaces that they used to occupy being reoccupied, but it's also questions of capacity. So I really love that the writers and the showrunner and the producers are really thinking we want to show that in a kind of raw way. It also really gave the actress who plays Monica Rambeau, Tioni Paris, a chance to act in a way that's a bit more serious. We've seen her have bits and pieces of serious moments in the previous episodes, but I think she really comes into her own this episode with a little bit more dramatic weight, and it was great to get a sense of who Monica Rambeau is in the MCU and how we should perceive her. She's a captain, which is no accident, given the identity of her character in the comic books. But I thought that opening scene was thrilling. Also, getting a look at her in the context of Sword, what her position was there, what her mother's legacy with Sword was. Really nice to see that call back to Maria Rambeau on the board when you're walking into the conference room at Sword. Her call name is intact there, Photon. So they're really just tying it all together, and I'm really glad that they're just not missing a beat in terms of making WandaVision really a connective piece of tissue to the MCU in a way that's much more profound than what we used to see on the Netflix shows, where there were just kind of one-liners and just quick sort of acknowledgments that were throwaways. This is really a mission statement about how closely connected these shows are. And we interrupt this program. The title is fantastic, goes perfectly with what's happening in the episode. So yeah, really, really positive comments to say. But I do want to give the other panelists a chance to weigh in, so I'm going to stop talking here and give the microphone back to the Grandmaster.
Thank you. Excellent answer, as always. Well, Taylor, they do interrupt this episode, this program, I should say. We were used to the sitcom setup, and now they give us they take away that magic, the sitcom magic. Is that too soon, or were we needing this right now? What do you think?
This episode is absolutely brilliant. Everything is perfect. Should I go on?
Yeah, you should go on.
Absolutely. No, it was the perfect time. Absolutely perfect time. They showed us what was going on outside. They answered a few of the little questions that we've been seeing throughout. Who was the voice on the radio? How did Monica Rambeau get in there? What is SWORD doing? And now we know all of that, and so much more, all in a space of a very short episode. We know a lot about SWORD, which is an organization that we have not seen at all in the MCU up until this point. Now we know everything we need to know about it going forward, at least where it is at this point in history. The Monica Rambeau, we know everything we need to know about her. We know that she got blipped. She came back. Her mother passed away. Her mother started SWORD. Took her 3 weeks to recover, and then she went back to work. That says a lot about Monica Rambeau right there. It also tells us a lot about Wanda. So Wanda got blipped, came back, fought the war to end all wars against Thanos, went to Tony Stark's funeral, and then apparently had a breakdown, and something happened that caused her to create Westview, New Jersey, in whatever fashion she wants it in. We think she did it. She may not have done it alone, but that's the indicator so far. So just packed full of information, and as Lord Deathman said, the tying together of the entire MCU universe, bringing in Agent Wu and Darcy and Monica Rambeau and what happened to her mother, just absolutely brilliant. It was just an incredibly huge amount of information, the perfect point to pause. And I just loved seeing them going through what we went through for the last couple of weeks. They discovered this TV show and they're watching it episode by episode. Darcy got invested in the show and all the questions. Wu was writing the questions on his whiteboard, the exact same questions that we've been asking each other in our reviews every week. So again, absolutely brilliant. Perfect time to adjust the show. And starting next week, of course, we're going to be back inside that hexagon. There's no leak spoiler here. They did release a trailer the other day that showed some clips of Wanda doing sitcom stuff all the way up into the 2000s, a la the Breaking the Fourth Wall, a la Modern Family type sitcoms. So we know the sitcoms are going to continue in some way, shape, or form, or the episodes are going to continue in some way, shape, and form. But we also know that what's happening outside is going to continue, and now we have a point of reference as to what exactly is going on outside. So I just can't say enough. Fantastic episode.
Excellent answer, as always. I keep repeating that, but it's true. You spoke of Darcy Lewis and Agent Wu. We have seen those characters before, and well, I won't say we had those thoughts, but they're both not real popular side characters in the history of the MCU so far. Lord Deathman, how did you see them before? And did that change a little bit after this episode?
Well, in terms of Jimmy Woo, I want to start there because there's some context with comic books there. As much as I see people love to scrape the paint on this show and they're hugely obsessive about WandaVision, we have a very obsessive fan base with this show who is, looking for every single detail in every corner of the frame. But what I don't hear a lot about Jimmy Woo is that he's actually an existing Marvel Universe character. In fact, the character actually predates Marvel. He made his first appearance in Yellow Claw #1, Timely Comic Books, before it was even named Marvel, and that was back in 1956. So the gimmick with the character is that, he had some ancestral roots that went back to Mongolian warlord. I think it was Genghis Khan was the gimmick at the time. And over the years, the Mongolian Empire sort of evolved into this Atlas Foundation in contemporary times. So there's a lot of history with the characters. What I'm trying to get across here, and at some point, I know the Jimmy Woo or the James Woo character was sort of up to take over the Atlas Foundation and replace its current leader at the time, which was the Yellow Claw. So he may just seem like comedic relief, but there's a lot that you could unpack about the character later on. And it was great to see him callbacks to his magic tricks from the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, which was awesome and excellent. I just think Randall Park is just an excellent comedian, like every other actor on this show. Knows comedic timing, but still knows how to bring weight into the performance when he's calling Wanda on the radio and they make that attempt to sort of break into the Westview simulation. There's urgency there, right? It's no longer comedic. So I like the fact that people are just able to sort of move back and forth. And the same thing goes for Darcy, right? Not necessarily a Marvel construct, and anyone who may know difference, feel free to keep me honest in the comments. But I don't think Darcy appears in the comic book. So new invention of the MCU. I've always appreciated her. I've found that there are a lot of different fans who don't appreciate Darcy's comedy, or maybe they think of her as an unnecessary character. But I always thought of her as being a strong supporting character in the Thor franchise. And it's great to see the evolution of her character. A doctor now with a specialization. She's well versed in sort of coming into these types of situations where the government or an organization might need consultation on something that's just a bit weird. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, she was there as a dark elf, tried to take over the world with a mystical relic, the Infinity Stone there. So really loving the portrayals of both character. I don't think that they're superfluous in any way, like I've seen some criticism. I think they're both carrying along the story nicely, and there's a huge runway for those characters to do different things in the MCU later on.
Yeah. What struck me about those two actors, basically, they're both from sitcoms, which is actually quite nice. They bring in the sitcom actors into a show which has sitcom structure. So, and they show their love for that sitcom also in this episode. So I thought that was really beautiful.
It's
Arch,
certainly very meta.
yeah, Arch. Um, Before we go talk about that ending of this episode, do you have anything to add about what Lord Deathman said?
Yeah, actually, I was going to get to that anyway, but I'm glad you asked. I really actually appreciate what they've done with Darcy. In fact, I saw somebody comment about this the other day, that she kind of went from somebody that didn't know a lot of science to a doctor. But I just kind of want to address sort of like how her character's evolved. I mean, this is a person who took on an internship and was accepted and worked with the likes of Jane Foster and Eric Selvig. So this is somebody who definitely had, an interest. And I think, previous iterations of the character, you're seeing sort of, a youthful lack of responsibility sort of out of this version of the character. But it's clearly somebody who's very intuitive. And I think one of the key scenes you see at the beginning, when she's in the van, she really quickly puts the social structure together of what's happening. She realizes that everybody in this car is in different fields and deduces that SWORD must not know what's going on exactly, or they would be more specialized in exactly what they're trying to do. So I think little scenes like that really show how smart this character actually is. And, I appreciate them. I think that kind of character building is subtle, and it's the kind of thing that accompanies really good writing. It's the kind of thing, really good writers think about, is how to establish, what this character's traits really are. So I thought that was really great. I don't really have a whole lot to add about Jimmy Woo, other than that I really appreciated the card trick. I think that went so subtle. You almost didn't notice it, but I love how they just added that little tie-in. I want to know who came up with that. I want to know who in the writing room said, you know what we should have him do? We should have him do a card trick, just really quickly. I just thought that was great.
Taylor, do you want to add something?
Well, I've never had an issue with the character of Darcy Lewis. I know a lot of people have, but to me, they kind of missed the point. She has an annoying personality. A lot of people do. Every character in a movie doesn't have to be someone you want to hang out with. Um, Different personalities bring more vivid world, a more vivid universe to life. If you have different people, if everyone's all the same, heroic all the time, polite all the time, um, never annoying, again, it gets boring. So again, yes, she has an annoying personality, but she's smart and she adds value. And for all the reasons that Arch said, her character has developed, and then we see where she is now. I mean, it's been how many years since we've seen her? She's had lots and lots of time while the world has been going through all sorts of calamities in the MCU that she's been living through. So obviously it's going to change her, and she has chosen to be a scientist and be active in. I mean, her astrophysicist. Well, she met the first public alien to come to Earth, and then she helped fight off an alien invasion. So naturally she went into astrophysics to make a contribution to this effort. And it just kind of shows that it's not just the superpowered superheroes in the Marvel universe that are making a contribution. It's also this smart but annoying person is doing her part.
Yeah, I do hope she has her cup of coffee by now. Arch, I want to go to you now. We have discussed the opening. We have discussed basically the characters we know coming back. But we also have a major thing going on in the end. You see what happens actually at the end of episode 3. And it was not caught by the sitcom because you saw the aspect ratio changing again. I actually love how Marvel is doing that. And yeah, there was that jump scare with Vision. Well, what do you think about this?
Great little production technique with the changing of the aspect ratio, and you saw from the sword point of view that they didn't catch this. This was edited out, so I thought that was fantastic. But in terms of what Wanda did exactly, we saw a scene right there where she can't just rewind it really quickly. I mean, perhaps she could, but instead of a character like Vision, where she wants this character to be a part of her fantasy, she throws this character out. She realizes that Geraldine at that point isn't going to play into her fantasy, and I think I mentioned last week that this ties into. I was curious about what level of the subconscious this is on. I think this is almost like waking somebody up from a dream. They don't know exactly what's going on. They're reacting on instinct, perhaps, and I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing like an instinctual level of Wanda, not an evil level, but somebody who is really focused on maintaining this level of happiness she's attained, whatever that means to her. But in terms of the psychology of what's going on, I think that fits in with the opening as well. There were a couple of little moments even in the hospital scene that I thought really set up the kind of more visceral nature of what's going on, even with Wanda or just in the episode or the show in general. And it was when Monica came back out of the into the hallway of the hospital. She left her room, and there was a little interaction with a man. It was some kind of nurse or doctor who passed by her really quickly. He was asking her for a phone, and she was asking him for directions. And the two of them really quickly realized that's all they wanted. They had purely selfish motivations. It was almost like a Walking Dead sort of scenario where this is what I need. I need this phone to call my wife. I do not care what you need or anything else going on. The only thing I am focused on is getting this phone. So I thought those little interactions really set up the sort of psychological nature that's going on in this sort of episode, and even with Wanda. So I thought that was great. I don't know. Throughout the whole episode, I thought, I had a few favorite scenes. I wanted to just touch on the cosmic microwave background. I smiled at that. It was one of my favorite moments in the episode, because the cosmic microwave background, you can see it, and it's really technically at the edge of the universe. It's as far away as we can possibly see. And the reason I mention that specifically is that if we're dealing with some sort of cosmic level power on that level, you're thinking of maybe entities like, I'm not saying Galactus is in the show, but you're thinking about high level entities like that, perhaps Mephisto, people that are tied into cosmic level powers. And I'm wondering if they mention that specifically just to kind of lead up to what could possibly be using a force that strong. Another little thing that I just wanted to mention really quickly here, Tyler Hayward. So we've got this leader of S.W.O.R.D. who sort of took over, presumably after Maria passed away. And I'm a little suspicious of this guy. I don't know if anybody else is, but there were a couple little scenes. One, they kind of walked into, when Monica and him first walked into the facility and you saw they were building weapons in the back, really reminded me of that conversation between Captain America and Nick Fury, where they're building the helicarriers in the Winter Soldier. I thought of that immediately. And I'm also I'm just wondering if he knows a little bit more than he's letting on at this point. I suddenly recalled that there was a character named Brian Hayward in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and this guy was tied into the Centipedes program, which was an offshoot of Hydra. Now, I'm not saying that Tyler is connected to Hydra, but it just made me wonder if that was sort of intentional. I mean, it's a somewhat specific name to give somebody. So I just think the guy may be not quite letting us know exactly what's going on, and he might have known why Wanda was there in the first place, and that's why he sent Monica there. There might be something a little more nefarious going on.
Taylor.
Yeah, just while Arch was talking, it just occurred to me that what we're seeing here is what happens when one of Earth's mightiest heroes, one of the most powerful beings probably in the universe, has a mental breakdown. The world gets scared, extremely scared. And then on top of that, we may have an evil entity trying to take advantage of that person, that incredibly powerful person who's having a mental breakdown due to grief and everything else. So I think that's just kind of the underlying theme of the whole show at this point.
Well, I have a question for you. Do you think Wanda is mourning or grief, or is she turned evil? What some people are saying.
No, I think it's grief.
Yeah,
I think she has so much grief that she has become delusional to a degree, and it may not only be her own mental state that's causing it. Like I said, I think and again, we could all be wrong. I think there's an outside evil entity pushing her and taking advantage of it.
Okay, Lord Deathman.
I just had a quick follow-up on what Stanton was talking about in terms of the director of S.W.O.R.D., Tyler Hayward. He is a brand new creation for the MCU, and I noticed two things about his dialogue and the character itself. One, he's the acting director of S.W.O.R.D., which says to me that there is a transition of power going on in S.W.O.R.D. In the comic books, we know that the director of S.W.O.R.D. is a woman by the name of Abigail Brand, who also happens to be a mutant. She is a cult fan favorite character, so I was surprised that they didn't bring her in immediately as the director of S.W.O.R.D. and sort of went with this kind of generic guy. But it does speak to what Stanton was saying in that maybe he's a placeholder, or maybe he could be an evil character. There could be a twist. Or, maybe he's a character that's just kind of meant to carry the narrative along as far as Monica's journey. Another thing that I noticed about the discussion that he was having with Monica as they sort of walk through the storage area and look at the weapons that are being developed, he mentions a failed astronaut program where half of the astronauts were sort of blipped out of existence, and he had some people who wouldn't volunteer. When you say astronaut, of course, my antenna go up for the Fantastic Four. So I don't know if this was kind of a low-key backdoor reference that S.W.O.R.D. is kind of working on this stuff, and it might turn out to be the origin for the Fantastic Four in the MCU. But, I think it's a decent working theory given the information we have at this point.
Yeah, I saw that theory also online earlier today. A lot of people are thinking this could be indeed Star setting up the way to the Fantastic Four. Well, we'll see. While Arch was talking about the brother of Tyler Hayward being Hydra, S.H.I.E.L.D. was infected by Hydra. Is there a chance S.W.O.R.D. is still infected by Hydra? I would not like it, by the way, because that would be like repeating yourself, and I'm allergic to that. But yeah, there's always that chance they bring that storyline back, since that was only explored in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is not officially canon, I believe. But Arch.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of clarify. I just definitely wanted to make it, put it out there that I definitely am not suggesting that Tyler is Hydra, and I don't think that's where they're going. I just made the connection just as a point of suspicion about him. Like you said, I think that would be starting sort of on the wrong foot, especially since we've already had the mass expulsion of Hydra from S.H.I.E.L.D., so I don't think that they'll start sort out that way. But I just want to make that clear.
And I also think they won't. But Arch, while we were talking, I want to get to that Vision image we saw earlier. What does that mean? Vision is dead. We discussed, I believe, last week that there was a scene deleted where Wanda was visiting Vision's dead body. Maybe they kept it for WandaVision. She did steal his body, and he is actually there.
You know what? I'm glad. I'm sorry if I neglected that. Actually, I mentioned it earlier. But so I had two thoughts about it. My first instinct was that she superimposed her knowledge that Vision isn't actually there over her imaginary version of the perfect Vision. But there's also a chance that was his body just actually there, and she's reimagining her perfect version of Vision over this lifeless, corpse of Vision. I don't know. And it kind of goes sort of towards the idea that perhaps Tyler really knows what's going on, and that he encouraged Monica to go there because he already knows that Wanda took Vision's body and this is where she went. If she took his body, I would have to assume almost everybody, wherever his body was, whether it was in Wakanda or in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody or wherever, they know about it. They'd almost have to. So if she did that, then yeah, maybe that's kind of the card up Tyler's sleeve, is that he knows that Wanda went there with the body. Maybe.
Yeah, because Vision is dead. It has been repeated in this episode. So how is Vision there? Why is Vision there? That will be the big mystery, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is a big thing, and I think it ties in with my overall thought on this episode. So I mentioned last week that it looked like it was very possible that the stuff that's being imagined can come out of that reality and into our own. And I think that was more or less confirmed because we now know that Monica was not going in and out getting dressed for sure. We didn't know that before, but we know that now. So I think this whole play is for the children. Like they've been saying it the entire time. I think all of this is about getting those kids out of and into our reality. And it might be about, for Wanda, it might be about restoring Vision and getting him into back into our reality in some form or another. But I think whatever entity might be behind this, it's about the kids and getting them out and into our reality, using them in some way.
Taylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that this episode did a fantastic job of filling in holes of the things that we've already seen, but it didn't give any real clues as to what is going to happen in the future. It didn't answer any of the mysteries. It just filled in what we've already seen, and I think that's brilliant. And I also think, well, my theory is that all the theories online and all of your theories are going to turn out to be completely wrong.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone who wants to add something that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, this is LDM here. I'd like to give everybody their key issues because WandaVision continues to be all over the map in terms of comic book references. So I thought a quick short list for the folks listening out there might be helpful. You definitely want to check out Vision Quest, West Coast Avengers number 45, published in 1989. House of M continues to be a huge influence on this series. So that's House of M number 1. That came out in 2005. The Visions also continues to be a huge reference in this series. So The Visions number 1, that whole miniseries published in 2016. Vision and the Scarlet Witch, the miniseries, and not the late 80s miniseries, but the early 80s one from 1982. That's 1 through 4. You definitely want to check that out. I noticed I opened that up for the first time today, number 1 in that series, and noticed that it's actually set in New Jersey in a place called Leonia, which is a real place in Bergen County, New Jersey, which has been changed to Westview in the series, which is interesting. A lot of the Halloween references are in that miniseries, by the way. And then last but not least, if you want to know a little bit more about Monica Rambeau, you definitely want to check out the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16, 1982. So if you do the Comixology or Marvel Unlimited type thing and you can go digital, all of this stuff is in both services. And hopefully the producer will let me provide a list that can be dropped into comments so that people can check these issues out. Those are your key issues, folks.
Excellent. Well, you heard it. If you want to read more, follow Lord Deathman's lead. That will conclude our review of episode 4. Before we finish, I would like to ask you to hit that subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram, like our Facebook page. Join the forum on Sakaar. That way you will never miss us and we won't have to miss you. Thank you, and see you next week for our episode 5 review. Bye bye.